When should you start saving for college? I'm Scott Frank, founder of Stone Steps Financial and certified financial planner. Today, let's talk about college savings. We get clients asking about college savings all the time. And one of the biggest questions is, when should we start? And of course, the answer is as early as possible. And why is that? There's this little thing called the time value of money. What the time value of money is I think Einstein called it the eighth wonder of the world, right? It's this idea that money builds on itself when we invest. So 10% rate of return is not just that 100 turns into $10 this year and then turns into $120 the next year by stacking 10 on top of 10. What happens is that we get 100 that goes to 110, and then that 110 turns to 121, and 121 keeps growing up, and eventually it doesn't grow in a straight line like this, it eventually goes like this. The sooner we can invest, the better. Now, you're like, well, I can't invest in my kids' college savings until they're like born, right? Technically, no, you could start saving before that if you wanted to. We can talk about that a little bit. But before we talk about when to start saving, which sooner is always better, let's start with what vehicles can you use to save? A common account that you may have heard of that actually isn't nearly used as much as it should be, in my opinion, is called a 529 account. What's a 529 account? A 529 account is an investment account that we get to put money in. Now, we put money in after tax money, so we've already paid. We don't get a tax deferral by putting that money in, for the most part. I'll touch on that in a second. But we get to put money in, and then we get to let it grow. And while it grows, we don't have to pay taxes on that money. And then once the money has grown, if we use that money for expenses that are for accredited universities or trade schools, we get to take that money out tax-free. Right? So that's a really cool benefit. Just a second ago, I said we don't get a tax benefit. The answer is that's actually state by state related. So you actually want to go look at the state that you live in and see if there's a tax benefit to using the 529 account. And now it gets a little complicated here because every state has a 529 account and every state has different rules. In the state of California, we don't get a tax deduction for saving to a 529 account. We actually, in the state of California, we use, for clients in our state, we use any 529 across the U.S. We can use it at any state. And we just go look for the states that have the best investment options with the least amount of costs. And that's the fund that we use. Some other states have very specific tax deductions for making a contribution. So if you make a contribution to your state fund, then you get to write off some of the deduction on your taxes. Now, in some states, you have to use the state's plan to get that benefit. In other states, you can use any state's plan to get that benefit. So you have to check the specific guidelines of your specific state to see what makes the most sense for you. When we're going and investing in a 529 account, 529 accounts get to grow. And of course, remember, similar to a target date fund in your 401k account at work, there's actually a lot of the 529 accounts. What they do is they'll set up accounts that are target date funds based on the year in which your child's going to go to school. Why does that matter? That matters a lot because the stock market can be pretty volatile, right? So the stock market, we could see a rate of return as high as 74% in 1 year or as low as down, 50% in 1 year. Now, if you're about to go to college, you don't want to see that big of a swing, especially on the downswing, right? So the closer we get to going to school, we want to have more and more money in stable funds, maybe in cash or in bonds, maybe just a little bit in equities. So what the funds do is they make it so that the closer you get to being in college, the more secure, or the safer, the less risky is the best way to say it, the less risky those investments are going to be. Now, you can always choose to do something else, but those are typically the main drivers that you get to choose for a 529 account. The other things you can invest in, you could of course just invest in a taxable account, just a traditional investment account, and grow your assets to save for your child to go to college. You could also invest in, you actually could invest in a Roth IRA if you wanted. Every year you invest in a Roth IRA, you can actually take the proceeds, the contributions of the Roth IRA out at any time before you're age 59 and a half. So if you wanted to use it for that specific reason, you could, I suppose. And then another thing that you could use is a UTMA account. A uniform gift to minors account is another thing you could use. We typically see clients using 529 accounts more than any other type. Reason being that we get that tax-free growth. A lot of people were worried about having too much money in 529 accounts because there's a 10% penalty when you take the funds out if you don't use it for college. And the question is like, I don't know what my child's going to do. I don't know if they end up going to college, or maybe they get a full ride scholarship or something like that happens. If you actually get a full ride, you actually don't have to pay the 10% penalty. But since then, in the last few years, there's actually been a new addition, and the new addition to the 529 accounts is twofold. You can actually use up to $10,000 a year for private tuition in K through 12, and then you can also take up to $35,000 of those funds, so long as the account's been open for 15 years, to fund Roth IRAs when the kids are young, which is great. So you basically, it creates kind of more of a safety mechanism for using 529 accounts with the kids while they're growing. So I would definitely lean that way of looking at 529s. Can be a great way, a great path for you to save for your kids. And the best time to do it, as we were saying before, is yesterday. You actually can, if you want. The way 529s work is you name a beneficiary, and then you have the grantor. Well, I can be a grantor and I can name myself the beneficiary before I even have children. And then I can just rename the beneficiary after they've been born, so long as I have a social security number. So I can start saving before they're born if I want to. But typically saving once they're born is totally fine, to just go ahead and do that and let those assets grow so that they can help pay for college. You know, find a dollar amount that makes sense for you, that you can help them save and grow. The costs of college are a different topic for a different day, whether you're talking a state school or a private school. But just saving something, anything from go can be so helpful to help save for college. I hope this was helpful for you. Have a great day.